Why you can't stop hurting yourself, Freud's darkest insight. Have you ever caught yourself doing something that you knew was going to hurt you, but you did it anyway? Staying in a toxic relationship, procrastinating on a dream that matters to you, sabotaging your own success just when things were going well? Why does this happen? Why would we, intelligent beings, knowingly steer our lives into pain, failure, and regret? This isn't just about bad habits. It's deeper. It's about a force inside us, one that Freud called the death drive, a psychological law of self-destruction hidden beneath the surface of our everyday lives. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. This is the story of why we keep hurting ourselves, and why that might be the most human thing about us. Freud shocked the world when he proposed that we are not simply driven by pleasure or survival. That was the assumption for millennia. Humans seek happiness, avoid pain. Simple, right? But Freud saw something darker, something far more disturbing. He observed that many of his patients would repeat painful patterns over and over again, even when they knew better. It wasn't ignorance, it wasn't stupidity, it was something else entirely. A compulsion, a pull toward suffering. He called it repetition compulsion, the psychological urge to repeat painful experiences, often unconsciously, as if the mind were addicted to its own wounds.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Now think about your own life. How many times have you found yourself back in the same emotional hole, even after crawling out of it? Maybe it's the same kind of relationship, the same failure to follow through, the same fear that whispers, "You're not good enough." You know the outcome, you know it will hurt, and yet you walk straight into it again. Why? Freud believed that deep within the psyche, beyond the ego and the conscious mind, there lies a hidden force, the death drive. It's not about literal death, but the desire to return to a state of non-being, to escape the unbearable tension of being alive. It's the polar opposite of eros, the life drive, the part of us that seeks connection, growth, creativity, and joy. These two forces are always at war inside us, and the terrifying thing, the death drive often wins. Not because it's stronger, but because it's quieter. It doesn't announce itself. It creeps in. It feels like comfort, like familiarity, like home. Have you ever felt strangely drawn to your own misery? That moment when you know you could make a different choice, but something in you says, "What's the point?" That's not weakness. That's the death drive whispering to you. It's the part of you that wants to return to stillness, even if that stillness is despair. It sounds crazy, but it makes sense. The mind craves what is familiar, and if pain is what's familiar, if trauma is what you grew up with, then pain becomes home. Ask yourself, what if the part of you that keeps self-sabotaging isn't broken, but loyal? Loyal to an old story, loyal to a version of yourself that was hurt and never healed, loyal to a narrative where you don't get to win. That's the tragedy Freud was pointing at. We're not just logical beings making smart or dumb decisions, we're haunted beings, haunted by past pain, by unconscious needs, by forces we don't even know are within us. And here's the twist. Freud didn't believe that we could ever fully get rid of the death drive. It's part of being human, but we can learn to confront it, to recognize when it's speaking, to understand its language. Because the death drive doesn't just destroy, it repeats. And repetition can be transformed. If you're going to repeat something, why not make it healing instead of harm? Let's go deeper. Have you ever noticed how people often recreate the exact environment that once hurt them? A child growing up with an emotionally distant parent will often find themselves drawn to emotionally unavailable partners. It's not coincidence, it's repetition compulsion. The psyche, in its bizarre logic, tries to redo the trauma. We unconsciously think, if I can make this painful situation turn out differently this time, maybe I'll finally be free. But it never works. Because we're not healing the wound, we're feeding it. We're trying to fix the past by recreating it in the present. So, what's the solution? First, we must be radically honest with ourselves. What are the patterns in your life that keep showing up? What pain do you keep reenacting, hoping for a different ending? You can't escape a pattern you won't admit exists. Second, we have to develop what Freud never fully explained: conscious awareness. The moment you see the pattern is the moment you gain a sliver of power over it. You can pause, choose differently, not perfectly, but differently. And third, we must grieve. That's the part most people skip. We must grieve the fact that we were hurt, that we never got what we needed, that we've been loyal to pain for so long. Grief is not weakness, it's the beginning of healing. Because when you grieve the past, you stop needing to repeat it. Now, I want to ask you something, a question so deep that it may haunt you in a good way. What pain have you made a home out of? And who would you be if you stopped living there? Because here's the truth. The death drive doesn't want you dead. It wants you stuck, numb, disconnected. But you are not here to be numb. You are here to be alive. And aliveness requires risk. It requires awareness. It requires the courage to say, this is not who I am anymore. And that's where we begin, not with fixing, but with seeing. The pain that feels like love. Why you're addicted to what hurts you. There's a strange and sobering truth that many of us spend our entire lives trying to avoid. Some of the deepest pains we carry don't feel like pain at all. They feel like love. They feel like home. They feel like comfort. And that's what makes them so dangerous. When we mistake what is familiar for what is good, we don't just tolerate our suffering, we protect it, we nurture it, we defend it like it's a sacred part of who we are. And this, Freud would say, is where the death drive becomes truly insidious, because it masquerades as something we need. The repetition of pain doesn't just come from masochism or low self-worth, it often comes from the fundamental human need to be loved, even if our earliest experiences of love were fused with neglect, abandonment, or abuse. Think about this. The first people who teach us what love is are our caregivers. If those figures were inconsistent, cold, or harmful, our brains learn to associate love with instability, with fear, with unavailability. And because the brain is a pattern recognition machine, we grow up seeking that same emotional blueprint, believing that if we can make someone like that love us, then we've finally healed the original wound. But that's a trap, because what we're doing isn't healing, it's reenacting. We're not rewriting the story, we're playing the same one over and over again hoping to change the ending by changing the characters. And most of the time, we don't even realize we're doing it. So we find ourselves drawn to people who are emotionally withholding or situations that mirror our past trauma, and we call it chemistry. We say, there's just something about them. And there is. That something is your nervous system recognizing an old wound and calling it home. It's your mind trying to resolve trauma by diving back into it. It's the death drive disguised as desire, and until we become conscious of that process, we will keep choosing what hurts us, not because we hate ourselves, but because we're chasing the ghost of a love we never received. Let's take a breath here. This isn't about blame, it's about insight. Most of us were not taught to separate love from pain. We were taught that love means proving your worth, that it means sacrificing, enduring, suffering, that it means staying even when it hurts, and so we internalize that love must come at a cost, that if it's easy, it's not real, that if it doesn't hurt, it doesn't matter. But what if that's the lie? What if real love, self-love included, is actually gentle? What if it's safe? What if it doesn't trigger your anxiety, your fear, your need to perform? What if the very things that feel boring to your trauma-addicted brain are actually the things that could save you? This is where healing begins, not in avoiding pain, but in questioning it, in asking yourself, why does this feel like love to me? Why am I drawn to people who don't see me? Why do I feel most alive when I'm in chaos? Why do I push away peace when it finally arrives? These questions aren't easy. They might shake the foundation of your identity, because when we start to see that what we thought was love was actually survival, we realize how long we've been living in we realized that we weren't crazy, we were conditioned. And the moment you see that, you have a choice: to keep chasing the familiar pain or to risk stepping into unfamiliar love. But make no mistake, it is a risk, because real love, real safety, real healing, they're not dramatic. They don't spike your adrenaline. They don't make you feel like you're fighting for your life. They feel calm. And for someone who's only known love as struggle, calm can feel terrifying, boring, wrong. That's the death drive again, pulling you back to the edge, whispering that you don't deserve ease, that safety is a lie, that if it doesn't hurt, it isn't real. So ask yourself, what if the love you've been chasing all your life was never love at all, but a repetition of your earliest wound? What if your loyalty to pain has been the only way you knew how to stay connected to the people who hurt you? And what if breaking that loyalty is the most loving thing you can do, not just for yourself, but for the generations that come after you? Because healing doesn't just end a cycle, it creates new ones. And when you choose love that doesn't hurt, you're not just changing your life, you're rewriting the script for everyone who comes next. The hidden reward of suffering, why you secretly don't want to heal. There's a deeply uncomfortable truth that every seeker of healing eventually has to face. Not everyone actually wants to heal. In fact, many of us, without even realizing it, stick to our suffering not because we enjoy pain, but because pain gives us something we're afraid to lose. This is the paradox Freud uncovered in his darkest insight, that suffering, for many, is not just a burden, It's an identity, a compass, a form of control. And if you take it away too quickly, the psyche panics, because then you're left with a terrifying question: who am I without my pain? Pain, when repeated long enough, becomes a kind of shelter. A terrible one, yes, but a shelter nonetheless. It gives you a story, a reason why you are the way you are. It justifies your anger, your fear, your isolation, your inability to move forward. And in a world that demands constant performance, pain can be a powerful excuse to step out of the game. I can't, we say, not with laziness, but with conviction. You don't know what I've been through. And maybe that's true. Maybe what you've been through is unspeakable. But what happens when that pain becomes the cornerstone of your identity? What happens when your suffering becomes sacred? The ego is a master of survival. It will wrap itself around even the most devastating experiences if it means holding on to a sense of self. And that's where the hidden reward of suffering lies, in the stability it offers, in the way it absolves us from risk. Because healing isn't just about feeling better, it's about becoming someone new. It's about letting go of the wound that once protected you, and that's terrifying. Because if you stop being the person who was abandoned, betrayed, neglected, who are you now? What do you do with your life if you're no longer defined by what others did to you? There's also the power that pain gives us, not in a malicious way, but in a deeply human one. When we suffer, we gain moral high ground. We become the wronged, the misunderstood, the broken. And with that comes attention, compassion, even love. People gather around our pain. They validate it. They recognize us. That recognition can be addictive. And so, unconsciously, we may resist healing because we fear invisibility. We fear that if we let go of the narrative of suffering, we'll lose our place in the tribe. Now think about the stories you tell yourself, the ones you repeat when no one's watching. Are they stories of possibility or of limitation? Do you say, "This is who I am," or "This is who I became because of what happened to me"? There's a crucial difference. One is fixed, the other is fluid. One keeps you trapped, the other sets you free. But freedom is not always welcome, because with freedom comes responsibility. If I am no longer wounded, then what excuse do I have not to try? Not to love again, not to risk again, not to live? This is the fork in the road, and many of us, when faced with it, choose the devil we know. We stay in suffering because it's predictable, because it doesn't ask us to stretch, because it doesn't challenge our self-perception. Healing, on the other hand, demands everything. It asks you to betray the version of yourself who's survived, and that can feel like betrayal, even though it's liberation. So ask yourself, what does your suffering give you? What secret reward do you get from staying stuck? Maybe it's safety, maybe it's certainty, maybe it's connection. Whatever it is, name it, because only when you name it can you begin to ask a more courageous question: is the reward worth the cost? Because there is a cost. The cost is your future, your joy, your capacity for love, your ability to create something new. And the longer you cling to suffering, the more those things slip through your fingers, not because you're broken, but because you haven't yet decided that you're allowed to be free. Healing is not a destination, it's a rebellion against the parts of you that were taught to settle. And every time you choose to let go of pain, Not by denying it, but by refusing to let it rule you. You take a step closer to who you really are. Not the wounded child, not the broken adult, but the being beneath all of that. The one who was never hurt in essence, only in form. The one who has always been waiting for you to come home. Becoming the architect of your fate, escaping the gravity of your past. At some point you have to decide, are you going to live by design or by default? Are you going to keep orbiting the gravitational pull of your past, or are you going to break free and create something new? Something that's truly yours. The pain, the trauma, the unconscious patterns, they will always try to pull you back. Like gravity, they exert a subtle but constant force. But unlike gravity, your past only has power if you keep giving it mass. And that's the final insight Freud never explicitly gave us, but one we must arrive at ourselves. You are not doomed by your drives. You are defined by your decisions. The death drive is not a sentence, it's a signal, a sign that you are still carrying something that once kept you alive, but now keeps you small. It's not evil, it's not your enemy. In fact, it's loyal. It's trying to protect you the only way it knows how, by stopping you from risking too much, from wanting too much, from living too fully. But safety and aliveness are not the same thing. And if you want to step into the life that's truly meant for you, you have to risk betraying that old protector. You have to say, thank you for getting me this far, but I'm not surviving anymore. I'm ready to live. Living means responsibility. It means being the one who chooses, not the one who reacts. It means waking up each day and asking, what story am I telling myself today? What identity am I reinforcing? And who do I become if I choose a different narrative? That's not easy. It's not glamorous. There's no applause for it. But it's the beginning of freedom. True freedom, the kind that isn't dependent on external circumstances, but comes from knowing that you are no longer a puppet of your past. You are the architect now, the author, the builder, and everything in your life, your relationships, your habits, your beliefs, either supports the future you want or reinforces the past you've outgrown. There is no neutral ground. So choose with intention, love with courage, let go with grace. And when the old wounds whisper to you, because they will, whisper back, I see you, I honor you, but I don't live there anymore. The hardest part about healing isn't the pain, it's the unfamiliarity of peace. It's learning to stand tall without the crutch of suffering. It's giving up the comfort of being a victim and stepping into the daunting power of being a creator. That's not just psychological growth, that's spiritual evolution. So I leave you with this. What would your life look like if you no longer needed to be broken? And who would you be if pain was no longer your proof of existence? Because the truth is, you were never meant to spend your life hurting yourself. That was never the plan. That was the pattern. And now you get to choose something else. You get to choose freedom.